Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, Mark and Paula Persons. Now, they've been an engineering team in the contract engineering business for 44 years, and they finally retired, but they're being honored with a huge honor by the Minnesota Broadcasters Association. And Mark and Paula have a really interesting story to tell and some great advice for us as broadcast engineers. That's coming up next on TWiRT.
This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics with the Bionics Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. By Nautel, worry-free transmission you can count on with outstanding control, reliability, efficiencies, and Nautel's unmatched 24/7 customer support. Online at nautel.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts.
Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech Thanksgiving edition. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. So delighted to be here with you. It is just a typical November day. Yeah, the clouds come in November. It gets cold outside. You want to be inside. You're getting ready for Christmas. So I hope you guys are having a good Thanksgiving. Maybe you got some family, some friends. Maybe you took some people in. We certainly did here at Harnack House. We took some friends of friends in and fed them Thanksgiving meal. Look, I'll be totally honest with you. We're pre-recording today's show. It's not really Thanksgiving for me. It's 2 days away, and that's okay. We're gonna give you a fantastic show with some fantastic people. Chris Tarr is off today. He's enjoying turkey, and he was during the pre-record too. But we're ready to have a good show with a famous couple. A famous engineering couple. And you don't often hear all those words together. Famous engineering couple. And that would be Mark and Paula Persons. Mark and Paula, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Great to be here.
Good morning and happy Thanksgiving. Happy Turkey Day.
Thank you. So we have got some cool things to talk about. And a little bit of the show is going to be just honoring you two for the work that you've done and talking about an award that you guys have received. I need to get my notes in front of me here. Mark and Paula Persons, they were inducted into the Minnesota Broadcasters Hall of Fame at a ceremony in Rochester, Minnesota recently. And the couple, they ran their engineering company for 44 years before finally retiring. They built 12 new radio stations and serviced, 100 others or more, mostly in northern Minnesota. So Mark and Paula, give us a little taste of what we're talking about on today's show.
We're just, it was a lifestyle. It's something we did because it just was the right thing to do because of my broadcasting history. And we'll talk about that.
Good.
And I actually married into it, so I learned.
Paula, did you marry in when Mark was already engineering, or how did that timing work out?
Actually, we became engaged, and then he came home one day and says, by the way, I quit my job and I've decided I'm going to do my own engineering. And I'm going, shouldn't we have discussed this ahead of time? No, you don't need to know that. I'm thinking, oh no, here we go.
Oh my goodness.
But it worked out great. We've enjoyed it. I worked with a legal firm.
Oh, gotcha. So okay.
Immensely, because I had the secretarial and the accounting background. So I actually took care of the office. I was the office manager at that point.
And I actually grew up in radio. It started in the 1920s with my father. And then my folks built WELY in Ely, Minnesota in 1954. And I was only 7 years old at the time. But there I was turning the knobs on the transmitter because I wanted to know how this thing worked. And it never stopped.
He actually built a radio station when he was 7, and it went a block and a half. His little brother, who was 5 at the time, wrote copy for ads. This is, they were in Ely, Minnesota. Ely's not a real big town.
Well, now, if my folks could have a radio station, then I could too.
There may have been a difference in licensing procedures, but yeah.
Just a tad.
Oh my goodness! Well, we've talked to Mark before about some of his history with the Army and teaching electronics classes, and then his early life getting going. We're gonna look back at some of that, but then Mark also and Paula will have words of wisdom for us, and we'll also talk about the next generation of engineers. The needs of kind of changed, but there's still engineering to be done. And maybe I'll add a couple thoughts about that as well, because I'm in the process of kind of rebuilding about 6 radio stations in Hawaii. And yeah, there's RF to do, but man, I have spent the last 2 months in my spare time prepping computers. We've got close to 30 computers at this radio station, most of them doing individual jobs. So the times are changing, and there's plenty of ways to get this done nowadays. But hey, real quick before we jump into pictures and stories from Mark and Paula Persons, let's talk about Nautel for just a minute. Nautel has this transmitter that I encourage you to check out. A lot of people are buying this transmitter and loving it. It's the Nautel GV2. So it's the second version of the GV transmitter. And this is a special transmitter for several reasons. It's digital, it's efficient, it's intelligent, and it's refined. Now, what does all that mean? Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. It's an all-in-one digital transmitter. It has significant technology enhancements. It's that they're the first in the industry capable of integrating all HD radio components inside the transmitter. So there's no more, this box does this and this box does that. You simply deliver audio to the transmitter, and you can deliver that audio over live wire or AES-67 audio over IP. And if you don't have that, well, you can easily create that at the transmitter site. But you just add audio, and it will do the rest in terms of the FM analog signal and then the HD signals. It has the Xperi Gen 4 importer, exporter, and X-Gen implementations for HD radio encoding, your station logo, your artist experience. And it's the first solution that absolutely locks FM and HD signals synchronously to eliminate that HD FM blend drift. You don't need any additional hardware to make that happen properly. It has Omnia for Nautel built into it. So it's the Omnia processing is built right in. This is the Omnia 9 processing. It is so cool. And it has of course, the new, finally, the new Nautel's award-winning advanced user interface, which gives you a really comprehensive suite of transmitter management features and just all kinds of instrumentation, so you can see the health of the transmitter. It even tells you some things about the health of your antenna. Gives you kind of a look at the whole thing. Check this thing out. This is the GV2 integrated HD radio air chain. And this gives you this makes HD radio so easy. And of course, it makes FM just a walk in the park. Love this transmitter. Check it out from Nautel at nautel.com. Thanks, Nautel, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. I'll bet you that Mark has probably touched a couple of Nautel transmitters himself, AM or FM, right, Mark?
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you about a big one later today. But first, okay. I really, really, really want to tell you how smart engineers are. You see, there was this foreign country where something terrible was put on the air, and 3 members of the station were scheduled to die. And this must have been a French colony at one time, because the method of death was guillotine. A blade comes down, cuts off your neck, your head at your neck, and that's the answer. So they put the station manager in the machine, pulled the cord, and the blade came down and stopped just this far from his neck. He was saved. It must have been divine intervention. So they let him go free. Darned if the same thing didn't happen to the program director. Then they put the engineer in, and they're getting it all set up and everything, and he's looking around and he says, "Wait, I see the problem." So now you know how smart engineers are.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think I heard that joke a long time ago, but you really encapsulate, you customized that. Wow. Because I thought maybe you were talking about Vietnam, Because wasn't that under some French control there for a while?
It was
It was.
it was a French colony on a couple of occasions.
Yeah. I saw. See, I thought this was a true story. I was. You got hook, line, and sinker. You got me. Jeez.
I even fixed a few transmitters.
Yes, she has.
Yeah.
The guys would call me in the middle of engineers. They'd be off the air and they call me in the middle of the night and they'd say, I love this one. He calls me in the middle of the night and he says, we're off the air. And I had heard Mark and I says, we're in Minnesota. Well, how cold is it outside? I said, and he goes, what difference does that make? He wasn't going to listen. He wanted to talk to Mark. Mark was out of town. I says, well, I need to know how cold it is. He says, well, it's 40 below. I says, that's your problem. And he goes, well, what do you mean? What do you know? And I says, well, it's a case of the transmitter. Mark checked it out in the book that the transmitter worked to 40 degrees below zero. And it was 40 below. If you take a trouble light and wrap it around your coaxial cable or whatever it was.
Oh, this was a satellite dish.
Satellite dish.
Oh,
if you wrap it around that and put a rug over it and warm it up, you'll get back on the air. And sure enough. So I actually fixed that. I put that station back on the air. And that's why I became a licensed ham operator, because then if I told them I was an extra class W0HA, they kind of listened to me once in a while.
And I'm W0 Hotel, or she's Hotel Alpha. I'm Mike Hotel, but that's another story. So we're extra class hams. We just live the life of electronics.
It's experiences like that make you expert engineers. You kind of know what the parameters are. Your experience gives you really good insight as to what could be wrong. And look, I got to tell you, you're lovely people. I mean, I don't. There's got to be a big Mark and Paula Persons fan club, and apparently there was, judging from the induction ceremony. So we have some photos to start out with, don't we, Mark? We have photos 1, 2, 3, and 4 here that we're gonna put up here in just a second. There we go.
What's
going on here?
Me speaking and Paula, before Paula got to say her words at the podium there. And then the next photo is Paula speaking and me watching her with a big smile on my face, by the way.
It was an interesting night because that was the night of the vice presidential election debate. Yeah. And our governor of Minnesota was Tim Walz, and so he was there that night, or he was at the debate, and it was kind of fun to be in our room in Minnesota and Rochester with all the broadcasters because there was a lot of talk about the debates going on.
Sure.
Of course. Okay.
And the next photo, this is just a portion of the room with the table we are at on the back side of the table and gathered around our friends. So that was really nice. And had a great time that night, although it was kind of a nervous night because, like I say, more people in the room than you can see here. And it was a little bit on edge there for me to get up and speak. Remember, I'm an engineer, not an announcer. Thank you.
Usually
but
it's
but Mark, Mark, you're an outgoing engineer. That means you're not fixated on your own shoes. You look at the other person's shoes.
Right, sure enough.
And he does tie his shoes once in a while. I've always said you can tell an engineer, if you're lucky, they get up in the morning, they take a shower, they comb their hair, they tuck in their shirt, and they tie their shoes. Then they work a 24-hour period. And if you're lucky, they might tuck in their shirt and tie their shoes during that 24 hours. But a lot of times they don't because they are not people. Okay. And that was something about this award. There have only been 3 engineers that have been inducted. And not any spouses of engineers who were inducted, because that's pretty rare, because it's usually, they wanted all this video of us to show. And it's kind of like, no, we're radio, we're engineers. We don't do that.
We have a video also. Mark, is now a good time to show the video that you sent a link for?
Sounds like a great idea.
All right. About how long is the video, Mark?
Oh, just a couple minutes, 3 minutes. I think.
All right. Well, Suncast is ready to play it, so let's roll it, Suncast.
Paula Persons may not be known to the general public, but nearly every broadcast operator in Minnesota and beyond knows them, trusts them, and relies upon them when it comes to towers, translators, and transmitters. We can call them the silent heroes, but today the Minnesota Broadcasters Hall of Fame proudly welcomes Mark and Paula Persons to the class of 2024. The team of Mark and Paula Persons is from Brainerd, where they ran their radio broadcast engineering business for over 44 years. Both are extra-class amateur radio operators. Mark started in broadcast engineering as a preteen at his family-owned WELY radio in Ely, Minnesota. He did most of the wiring for the family's KVBR radio in Brainerd in 1964 while still in high school. Mark enlisted in the U.S. Army and taught electronics at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, then spent his 21st year in Vietnam doing high-tech electronic repair. Paula was closing secretary at a real estate firm when Mark, now a civilian, bought a home to set up an electronics shop. They threw her in with the deal. Their marriage in 1978 was a perfect match to be radio broadcast engineering contractors. They touched most radio stations in the central and northern part of the state. 12 new radio stations, including 6 AM directionals, were built from the ground up with Mark's hands, including one in Florida and one in California. Many more were upgraded when on the road. Paula was a full half of the business. While Mark was out in the field building and repairing stations, Paula was in the office telephoning customers and making sure the financial part of the business was being taken care of. Mark spent time in his shop designing equipment for the broadcast industry. He was one of 6 installers of Motorola AM stereo back in the 1980s. Mark repaired broadcast equipment for local and international customers and is often called the radio doctor. Mark continues as a mentor to 3 radio broadcast engineers and is a writer for Radio World with over 200 articles published. Mark was honored as the 2018 Engineer of the Year by the Society of Broadcast Engineers. He also received their Lifetime Achievement Award in 2020. That was only the 10th such award in the 4,500-member association's 55-year history. Scuba diving has occupied much of Paula's time in retirement with over 1,000 dives worldwide. Mark served as a chaplain at his local VFW post and continues to write their website, which has received 5 state honors. While working, Paula felt it was important to give back to the community. She served on the board of the local Humane Society, as youth director of their church, Girl Scout leader, on the board of the Northland Arboretum, trustee of the VFW Auxiliary, and is past president of the Brainerd Rotary. She also has been involved in cleaning over 600 military graves. Mark has spoken at the National Association of Broadcasters in Las Vegas and at the Wisconsin Broadcasters Clinic, which is now paired with the Minnesota Broadcasters Association. Mark and Paula are supporters of Rotary International, the Northland Arboretum, the Pavic Museum, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, Habitat for Humanity, and the Salvation Army, among others. This is Maynard Meyer of KLQP-FM Radio in Madison, Minnesota, former MBA board member, and I'd like to extend my personal congratulations to Minnesota Broadcasters Hall of Fame 2024 inductees, Mark and Paula Persons.
Wow, what a fitting and comprehensive. Well, maybe it's comprehensive you can get in 2.5 minutes of tribute. Wow.
Yeah, but I should tell you that we took this whole thing very seriously. We never had a plan B. I never did anything else, and Paula really didn't do anything other than the lead up to our business for 44 years. We are living, you can see some of it behind us, in our second architect-designed facility, where the first floor is the office and the shop, and the living quarters are above. And it was just the right way to do this whole thing. And it was very difficult with the city to convince them that we have a business, but gosh, we don't have any walk-in customers, but we're in a residential area. We actually had to get a permit twice to get a business permit to run out of our home. Can you believe that?
Wow. Well, if you're going to have tons of customers coming in, I understand that there might be some objection, but what we do for a living, I work out of my home. Of course, I work for Telos, but I also do some engineering. But yeah, the rules are rules. And I guess it's hard to
And
make
by the way,
make adjustments.
we have a separate entrance for UPS and FedEx.
Ah. Hey, Mark supplied me with some talking points and questions, and my dyslexia comes up from now and then. Mark, I'm supposed to ask you about the fact that you didn't wear pants while you were working. Is that right?
Well, wait a minute. Let's be a little more descriptive on that. I didn't wear blue jeans like everyone wears today. Okay.
You didn't wear blue jeans. Okay.
Yeah, that was the difference. Okay, I wore dress pants, and guess what? I wore shirts like this every time I went to a customer's house. And the whole thing is, it put me in the right frame for success. It was the right thing to do.
He wouldn't let me wear blue jeans either. I was in the office.
Yeah.
But people would show up, they need a piece of equipment, so they call me up or they wanted to drop off a piece of equipment that Mark would repair. And so I felt I had to be in the right frame of mind, so I actually had the business attire as well.
But that was even when most days when no one showed up.
Yeah,
I mean, you were alone in the office. But there's another story to that. When we were both in the office, there's a photo in there about our office showing Paula at one of the two desks. We might get to that. But,
photo number 5. Yeah.
Okay, fine. And basically, we worked as co-workers. Unfortunately, I'm not in this photo because I'm the one taking the photo, but there's my desk on the right and there's Paula on the left. Did you notice we each have 3 monitors on our desk? We do a lot of computer things to make things happen. Anyway, where was I going with this whole thing? We worked as co-workers, and we could hand signal each other across the room if one or both of us was on a telephone. And the point is that we were employees, or actually I was her employee. That's another story unto itself. But at 5 o'clock, then we became husband and wife. And then we went upstairs to our residence. And that was the plan. That's how we did our work.
We learned early on that I took care of the office, he took care of the shop. And it worked out pretty well. I did lay down the law one time when he ordered a $15,000 piece of equipment and didn't tell me about it until after he ordered it. And it's like, dear, I kind of need to know when you're going to spend that much money. So I did take and put him on a budget per se. You are allowed to spend X amount of money before you tell me. But other than that, it's like, dear.
I needed it. It was a spectrum analyzer. Everyone needs one of those.
Sure. Now, which one of you was the HR department?
Oh, I am. Oh, wait a minute. No, I take that back. I'm sorry. Paula is HR. I'm the IT department.
Okay.
And I don't touch the tools I learned early on, if you take a screwdriver, you put it back right where you found it. And he learned, you don't mess with the books, dear.
And there's another story that goes with that too, and that is that a workbench is to work on. It is not a place to pile stuff. So a workbench is always clear, ready for the next project to show up and be plunked on the bench for repair. So many times I've been to radio stations where back in the day, they had engineers and there's a workbench. But nowadays, what's on the workbench? Boxes and boxes full of stuff. How can you repair anything with all that stuff in the way? Our shop has over 20 feet of workbench space for project A, project B, project C. That's a mechanical bench. And then there's even a UPS bench for for packing and unpacking things. But the point is that each one of those spaces is ready to go at any moment.
Well, and he's the one that we had a house built for us. We decided to do our own wiring. And when we decided to do the electrical, the builder, okay, we'll give you a couple days. And I says, it's going to take us longer than that. And we kept working. And one weekend, I just put in the outlets, the electrical outlets on the bench. I got done with the weekend and my hand was swollen. And then so I decided I would count the outlets. He had 92 outlets on one bench. And it's kind of like, dear, do we really need all these outlets? Well, yeah, I don't want to have to reach over this piece of equipment for this. And it's kind of like, wait a minute. And then I had to take each screw. Now, this is an engineer. The screws had to be so the heads were straight up and down. They couldn't one be half and one be the other. And I've had people come in and they look at our wiring and it's like, who had to do that? He would give me a wire and he'd say, okay, run this over to the office or run this wire. We need electricity in the bedroom or in the kitchen. I get it done and then I go back and he says, okay, now do this run over here. So I do know a little bit of electricity now.
And interestingly, our desks in the office are islands, and coming up through the floor from the basement are 3 conduits. One is for data and telephone, another one is for power, and a third one is for UPS power. There's a 3 kW UPS unit in the tech room that, and then of course the whole place is backed up by a fully automatic 22 kilowatt Kohler generator plant. So the UPS keeps everything going for the 10 seconds it takes for the generator to come online and stabilize.
And how many electrical panels do we have?
8, I think.
Oh my goodness.
Well, we have some off-peak power too. I mean, it's just one thing after another.
We are talking to Mark and Paula Persons on This Week in Radio Tech. They recently were honored by the Minnesota Broadcasters Association with the Hall of Fame Award. We'll be getting more from them and finding out a little bit more about that award and get in some more topics with Mark and Paula. I'm Kirk Harnack. It's This Week in Radio Tech. And, when we come back from this commercial, one thing I want to make sure we talk about, it's not on Mark's agenda, I don't think, but, from what I'm hearing from Mark and Paula is they take, or they took, because they're retiring now, but they took their broadcast engineering business very seriously and treated it like a business and did everything in a business-like manner, from the way they dress to meet customers or even in the office to bookkeeping, accounting, and my personal experiences with Mark and Paula over the years, because I've done business with them, purchasing sign systems equipment and talking to Mark at NAB shows about authoring articles and things like that, and it's always been very up and up and very professional. And what a way to model your business and execute your business and run your business. And I think that's something that engineers can model as well, and would be very smart to do so. All right, our show This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by, in part, our friends at Angry Audio. I was just over at Angry Audio yesterday, and Mike Dosh, Catfish, reminded me of how useful the headphone disconnector is. Now, this is just a small, low-dollar item. It's it's one of the many things that they sell, that they have, but this has saved the life of so many 1/4-inch plugs and 1/8-inch plugs, or the 3.5 millimeter plugs, because it comes in a couple different sizes. But the headphone disconnector, if you're familiar with the MagSafe connector on Mac computers, on Mac laptops, then you already know how this works. The connector only goes together one way, so you're always assured of your left, right, and ground audio all being correct. There you go. There's the view of the end of it. Those magnets that are part of that, those oval magnets, they only go together one way. And that way, if your talent gets up with the headphones on and walks away, you're safe. That's why it's called the headphone disconnector. That's where the disconnect happens. Just a little tug. And at Catfish, Mike Dosh had to work hard to get the right amount of magnetism there, the right strength of magnets, so they wouldn't just fall apart. They wouldn't fall apart with normal use. But if you get them to walk away, they come right apart and they go right back together. They also make this disconnect gizmo. So this is a panel that you can use to you can install this, and your guests can just use half of the headphone disconnector. Actually, it's included there. The female portion is included when you buy the gizmo, the disconnect gizmo, and this just works really, really well. What an awesome idea that Mike Dosh has. And this is just part of the things that Angry Audio makes to help you build beautiful and efficient studios that really work well with people. The headphone jacks, the headphone amplifiers that Angry Audio has. I've installed a number of those at my stations, and just love these things. I was visiting Angry Audio yesterday to pick up in person to pick up a USB audio interface. I'm taking with me to Maui because Maui needs USB audio interfaces. Check it out. angryaudio.com is the website. Their products are available from dealers all over the world, including quite a few dealers in the U.S. Hey, This Week in Radio Tech is also brought to you by Max Connect. This is Josh Bone's company, but he's brought in quite a few professionals, broadcast professionals. And we'll take a look at the Max Connect website here. The Max Connect group, or the MK group here, they are a full-service broadcast technical firm, and they have offices in Alabama, Maryland, Ohio, South Carolina, and Texas. But they can serve anywhere in the U.S., even outside the U.S., but the East and Southeast are kind of their main areas. And as broadcast engineers, a lot of times to get something done right and on schedule, we need a little help. It's kind of hard to do everything on your own. I know you want to. I want to. Like right now, I have an engineer in Hawaii who is getting things ready for my arrival there, and together we'll finish the job up. Well, Max Connect can do the same thing for you. If you need a transmitter installation, you need a remote control revamp installation, you need everything calibrated, you need your remote control to work well. They're really good at this. You need audio processing, and maybe you need audio processing adjustment. I know as engineers, we take pride in doing that. But hey, get somebody who does this all the time, like Matt Levin, who works with Max Connect Group. They do all kinds of work, including repairs. See, now that Mark Persons and Paula Persons are retired, who are you going to send your stuff to for repair, for expert repair? Well, Max Connect Group can help you out there too. You can check them out on the web at maxconnect.com. I know it's spelled funny because, hey, the internet has got so many names. MAXXKONNECT, maxconnect.com. Check them out. Good people and great products and services. All right, it's Kirk Harnack on This Week in Radio Tech. Happy Thanksgiving to you. I hope your day is going well, whether you're watching it on Thanksgiving Day or, sometime in the big fat and happy Thanksgiving weekend, enjoying parades or football games and maybe leftover turkey. Well, with us on the show, Mark and Paula Persons come to us from their home, and I guess they're formerly their office. You guys still maintaining an office? What do you do in this office now that you're not working so hard?
We are super busy in our office. We're doing a lot of community help. We volunteer our time. And believe me, I'm an amateur photographer. I take thousands of photographs, and that's what makes the websites that I write good. One of them is sbe17.org. But if you pull up photo number 6, it reminds me that equipment came to us from across the country for repair, and then across the world. Boy, that's when I had a different haircut, too. Okay, the point
I don't remember that haircut.
Yeah.
It didn't last long.
Okay, the point is that I very much enjoyed doing electronic component level troubleshooting of equipment. And you're right. And I worked on RF amplifiers for FMs and all that kind of stuff. And the point is that I finally had to give that up because if we don't have a business and business insurance, it can't be done. So I'm glad that others are doing that now. But we are mentoring, and not just engineers, but Paula helps mentor their businesses so that they can conduct a broadcast engineering business. And that's no easy task, by the way.
Paula, I'm a little bit intrigued by a picture we saw earlier of you volunteering with cleaning up tombstones. Tell me a little bit about that. I didn't know that was a thing.
It's starting to be one. About 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I started with Daughters in the American Revolution, and one of their projects was to clean veteran tombstones. So a group of about 5 of us got into it, and it was great during COVID because you couldn't do anything else. But if you want to get into it, you use D2. It's used on the White House and it's used on the Washington Monument. But it's super, it's interesting to do it because we will take a tombstone that's maybe Civil War tombstone they sink. They're 250 pounds. They'll go down and some of them will be maybe 3 inches out of the ground. And we'll dig them out. We will lift them up. We will put dirt underneath them, and then we'll clean them up. And we've gotten about 600 that have been cleaned up over the years, and we thoroughly enjoy doing it. And it's heartwarming to be able to help these veteran families. And we're getting some people that will come through and say, "You took care of my family's tombstone." I mean, look at the lichen that was on that. You don't use any metal on them. So you clean them up, and that's what they can look like when they're done.
That's a toothbrush she's using, and I should tell you, they taste terrible afterward.
I thought about going there, and I thought against it, and then you did. Okay.
Oh, yeah. This is my penance. What did I do wrong in this world?
Oh my goodness! Oh wow! And well, I tell you what, we ought to move along. Mark, I'm not sure where in your list you want to head to next. Why don't you pick a good spot to restart here?
Paula has some stories to talk about me, unfortunately.
Oh, engineers go to strange places. So I got to tell about one. A lot of antennas and transmitter sites are in pastures. Well, Mark's in a transmitter building, goes out to the car to pick up something, and the cows decided to come check him out. Well, there was this bull that Mark's a city kid. He doesn't know about farms. And so he's headed back to the transmitter site. The bull gets in his way and decides Mark's messing around with the bull's heifers. And so he headbutts Mark, and Mark being Mark, will get out of my way. And the bull goes after Mark a little more and headbutts him more. So Mark runs into the building, gets back to the studio and says to the owner, "I just got headbutted by a bull." And the owner of the station talks to the farmer and says, "You tell him he needs to be careful. That bull could kill him." So he shows up at the radio station the next time he's there. Here's Chris Graham standing out there with a flag going, "Toro, Toro." We get stuff like that. There's never dull times with radio engineers. I've been known to drive him to a station because you usually don't want to be off the air during the day. So I would drive him to the station. I'd sleep. He'd work all night, and then he'd hop back in the car, and we'd come home. We're out in the Dakotas. He's taking equipment out of a radio station at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And a police officer comes by and sees this guy taking equipment out. "Hey, mister, hands on the car."
Hands up.
Yeah, hands up. So he puts him on the car, and Mark says, No, I'm the engineer. I'm supposed to take this home. And the guy says, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah, sure.
So he has to call the owner, who is not back home yet. So he's standing there for 15 minutes waiting for the owner to get home. And then the police officer finds out, yes, he finally gets a hold of him and says, "Oh, yeah, it's okay." Well, Mark doesn't bother. We're 6-hour trip coming home. He doesn't bother to tell me stuff like that. I'm typing up the article for Radio World and read this, and it's like, "Mark, you could have told me."
Yeah. Well, that was in the days before the internet when we could email something. She had to type it and then mail it. Can you believe that? But there I was at gunpoint like this for some time, and everyone says, "Doesn't that feel bad?" Well, I'm a Vietnam veteran. I know the procedure here.
Oh my goodness!
He's having a picture at the post office.
Mark, you and Paula, you reminded me of something that happened to me too. I mean, about before email. Mark, you've written like 200 articles, and it sounds like Paula's typed up a fair amount of those. I wrote some articles for Broadcast Engineering magazine back before radio became a offshoot of that. And yeah, I remember I typed them up double spaced on paper, included some photos, some paper, processed photos and sent that all off to the editors. Wow, that you're bringing back memories. That had to be back in the mid '80s.
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
remember when you used to have to send a check to before they'd send out the equipment, and then they'd get the check, and then they'd send out the equipment?
Yeah.
Where now you just do it automatically, and there's wonderful things like PayPal and everything else. But yeah, the industry has changed. It's hard to find engineers, the people who replaced us, rather than we had a couple, 2, 3 engineers who, well, actually 2 of them, who wanted to buy our business from us. Mark still wanted to mentor a little bit, and he didn't want to just leave it. I mean, this was a lifetime thing for him. So we actually decided to give away the business so that he could continue to mentor.
So we trained 2 broadcast engineers to take over our territory, so to speak, in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And guess what? A few years later, one of them retired. Oh, geez. There's a real lack of engineers. So, as mentioned earlier, I am mentoring. I'm a part of the Society Broadcast Engineers Mentor-Mentee program, trying to help them out. And one of my mentees is a 30-year-old young lady. Isn't that great, huh?
Indeed. In fact, Mark, we have to take another quick sponsor break here. When we come back, I'd like to understand a little bit more about how you mentor somebody, how you handle that relationship. I recently was assigned a mentee myself, and I've never really done this before. So we've talked a few times, and I send her. She's a younger lady. She's in the recording studio and theater area, but she wants to look into getting into broadcast. So let's talk a bit more about that when we come back. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by Broadcasters General Store at bgs.cc. And, they carry this wonderful line of equipment from Broadcast Tools. Now, you know about Broadcast Tools because Don Wingate makes all kinds of things that broadcast engineers need to solve problems. And one of those things is something called the IO Sentinel 4G2. That's a lot of letters and numbers, but that's what it looks like. It's on your screen right now, the IO Sentinel 4G2. What does this do? Well, it's a full-featured Ethernet-based data acquisition and remote control device. It has 4 optically isolated status inputs and 4 programmable relays. Okay, what does that do for you? Well, the inputs can be configured for wet or dry contact closure, status logic monitoring, and the 4 1-amp single-pole double-throw relay outputs can be configured for on-off, pulsed, or what they call reboot operation. Now, it can be controlled and monitored locally or remotely over any IP network, including, the internet. So you can operate the product using a web browser or a web-enabled mobile device. Email notifications can be set up to alert up to 8 email addresses. And logging of system status, along with a site ID, can be emailed in time spans from once an hour to once a day. It does do SNMP and set get to allow multiple units to be monitored and controlled with an SNMP management software. Give you an idea of one thing you can do with these. You can hook 2 of them back to back over the internet. Now, this is kind of cool. That way you get contact closures, let's say, at the transmitter site, and they get forwarded instantly to your studio. Some people have used this, for example, to maybe you can't put a satellite dish at the studio for one reason or another, but you can at the transmitter site. And getting audio back, not a big problem. There's certainly audio codecs to do that. But what about the contact closures? Some audio codecs offer that, some don't, but the IO Sentinel 4G2 certainly does that. And so you can have your contact closures at the transmitter site with the satellite receiver and bring them right back to the studio. This thing is so cool, solves a problem, just like so many of the Broadcast Tools products do. That's why their slogan is problem solved. Get your Broadcast Tools products from Broadcasters General Store. Now, the website, easy, bgs.cc. Their phone number, 352-622-7700. If that's not in your phone or in your electronic Rolodex, get it in there. 352-622-7700. I depend on BGS for so many things for my radio stations, and frankly, I have since the late 80s. You know, I've got stories about that, about working with Sam Phillips and his radio stations. So anyway, thanks a lot, BGS, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack. Chris Tarr has the day off, and we're talking to Mark and Paula Persons, pre-recording today for our show on Thursday. So we hope that your tummy is full of your favorite foods, and you've got, you know, loving people around you, and you're giving thanks, either on Thursday or sometime this weekend. Mark and Paula, Mark, could you speak to the topic of mentoring, and how do you kind of dial in? Okay, let's talk about this first. What's that?
Okay, this is called a Gates Biomote. It's a remote broadcast amplifier. Get this, it's from the mid-1950s, and it has tubes in it. I picked it up for $10 at a ham fest. You remember, you were hams, and after 40 hours of restoring it, it's a working unit again, and it looks pretty much like brand new. And I wanted to bring that in here because it's all a part of the ham hobby. But this wasn't ham. This happened to be left over from a broadcast station, probably somewhere in Duluth, Minnesota. But mentoring. What were you going to say about that?
No, I'm just with the mentoring. A lot of them, they will call. They will have a station, they can't figure it out. They're off the air, or something just isn't working right. And they'll call up and say, Mark, can you help me with this? What's the problem? And then they'll sit there and talk about it. Mark will say, well, try this, this, and this, and call me back.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while, they'll show up here. We had it with a spectrum analyzer. They bought a spectrum analyzer, didn't really understand how it worked. So they came here, they spent a few hours with Mark, and Mark showed them how it works, and I get it. Okay. And then they can walk away.
And interestingly, one of the things I have to teach mentees is Ohm's law. Volts, amps, watts, Ohm's law. And it's such a simple formula. When I learned that as a 8-year-old, I think, and it's stuck with me ever since, and it made it possible for me to just know how something is working or not working in an electronic circuit and do the repair. That's what it's all about. And without Ohm's law, I don't know that I could have done that kind of work. It's like my eyes into the circuit. Well, an oscilloscope is that way too. And I was teaching oscilloscopes the other day as well.
Well, a lot of your colleges now, your 2-year colleges, are technical colleges in many ways. And I happen to know the head of the college here in town. I says, they're not teaching broadcast. They're not teaching electronics in high school anymore. We need engineers. We need people that know Ohm's law. And she was interested, and she says, maybe we should start getting into that a little more. And I says, yes, because you're going to need it, because we're losing people to the to computers more than anything. Yes, we're using a lot of computers in broadcast, but you still have your transmitters, and AM and FM, you have to know your antennas. You have to understand this. And it's Ohm's law.
Interestingly enough, I picked up a used oscilloscope the other day. You can never have too many oscilloscopes, you understand.
I know.
And where did it come from? It was left over from a college that discontinued a program. It was a perfectly good scope, and I got it for a song.
Yeah. Do you like any of the newfangled oscilloscopes? They're thin. They're almost a little flat pack, and with a some kind of solid state display, or do you prefer the ones with the CRT in them? What do you like?
Well, one of those came to the shop the other day. First, I started instructing with the traditional CRT scope, with knobs that are very simple and straightforward: vertical, horizontal, gain, and speed. And so the mentee brought one of the new solid state ones. Well, fine, except that by the time she left, she's the 30-year-old, we still hadn't figured out how to run the darn thing to emulate what I had just shown for how to adjust for regular AM modulation. I have enough test equipment here to show AM modulation. Well, I have a leftover AM stereo generator that I use in mono, to actually simulate those things. And all that test equipment helps out when I write articles for Radio World as well.
Good point. Good point.
I have some more interesting things to talk about. If you go to photos 9 and 10, no, I take that back.
9 and 10.
Photos 7 and 8. 7 and 8.
Okay. Let's take a look, Suncast.
A friend.
Look at that.
Yeah, that's a parasail. It's a 130 horse engine below a parachute. So he took me up, and the next slide shows what I saw from the air over our beautiful lakes area. But this was fall, so there's a lot of fall colors there. But it was an interesting experience. I was warned that these things are very dangerous, and what the heck? I'm 77 now. I could die, and it would be okay. You see. So, but the point
is this near your home?
In our town here. Yeah.
Okay. That's beautiful.
It's less than 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
I'm a scuba diver, and so I'm going to Bonaire in February, and he decided he's coming with me, and there's a very good reason for that.
Oh, before we quite get there, let's do photos 9 and 10, where Paula volunteered at the Great Lakes Aquarium to come to carve her pumpkin underwater.
Oh my goodness! What a trick!
That is Paula. That's an annual, and here's her dive buddy, and there they are putting hands on the glass. You can see that's pretty thick glass too, but that's a favorite trick for kids to do that.
But I'm taking a scuba trip down to Bonaire, and I made the mistake the last time I was there of taking a picture. And you want to tell them about it, Mark?
Oh, is this the one where there's a broadcast facility there?
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately, the short wave facility has closed, but there's a medium wave facility, 800 kilohertz AM, 440,000 watts worth of transmitter, Nautel transmitters. There you go. 4 tower array, of which 1 or 2 are driven. They have 3 different antenna patterns. And in one of the patterns, I understand there's the equivalent of 4 million watts of energy going in one direction. I think they program to Venezuela sometimes to Cuba. I don't have all that information, but I will after I've been there. So that'll be fun to see that transmitter site. And there's an amateur radio station that's well known there too. So I'll get to go over there and operate because I'm a licensed ham. And then Paula will be doing her scuba diving there.
So, once radio gets in the blood, it doesn't go away. That's just, I was in Roatan diving, and there happened to be a little radio station there, and I walked by it, and I says, I got to go check that out. The divers, well, you can't do that. I says, I most certainly can. So I go to the back door, knock on the door, and say, hey, can I see it? Oh, yeah, come on in. And there's some of the sign systems equipment there and a few other things. And it's like, oh, I know about this. And the guy knew about Mark because he reads Radio World. So it's a small world.
I had to go look up Bonaire on the maps to see where it is. I figured it was someplace tropical. Oh my goodness, it's right off the coast of Venezuela, and it's near Curacao and Aruba. So you've got, really fancy, beautiful tropical neighbors all around. But
it's
not a big island. Yeah, not a big island, is it?
Oh, no, not at all. But all you can do there is dive, and they have a donkey sanctuary, and they do some great parasailing there as well. But wow. You go there for the diving more than anything.
Well, don't forget the radio station.
Yeah, the radio station. Mark, are you going to be able to arrange a tour, a bona fide by golly tour?
I've already arranged for it, and they're waiting for me at both the commercial station, and I don't know if it's commercial, but it's the medium wave station and the ham station. So all I have to do is show up. And by the way, we learned that the transportation on the island, they give us a car at the hotel, and it's standard transmissions. So we drove standard transmission cars years and years ago. Fortunately, there's a young 17-year-old guy across the street from us who has a pickup truck that's standard transmission. So we're going to relearn how to drive a clutch. and transmit.
But he doesn't know it, but they drive on the wrong side of the road over there.
Oh, they do.
Oh my gosh!
Have you done that before?
The wrong side of the road, no. The clutch and transmission, yes.
I've driven on
side of the road.
Yeah, I've driven on the left side. I've driven on the left side with right-hand drive, and thank goodness, my wife at the time was with me, and I was advised because the guy let me drive his Mercedes in Auckland, New Zealand, and he said, Kirk, just remember, he says, look left, turn left, go left. It's never to the right, you never go to the right. It's always to the left. Yeah.
Did you ever do those roundabouts? We were in Scotland they're going 60 miles an hour, and it was 6 lanes, and we weren't driving when we got through, and I said, boy, am I glad I wasn't driving that one.
Not one that's that complicated. No, wow. That sounds amazing. Let's see. What is we had a note here, Paula, at the end of the interview. Many of the hundreds of broadcast people that you met along the way have become friends and family to you. You want to chat about that just a bit?
They really are. We've taken trips with some of our broadcasters because they call you up in the middle of the night and they get you out of bed. You get to know them. You get to know their kids. We have one guy, I talked to him for a half an hour before I hand the phone over to Mark, because you want to find out what's going on with life. It's the same thing with us. It's just, there are wonderful people in broadcast. To receive this award for us was a very humbling experience.
And when people retire, you hear about them just completely disconnecting from the company they're working for and the whatever they're doing. They're just gone. And for us, that just hasn't happened. And as she mentioned, we still know all these people from the broadcast world who are still our friends. And when we go to Pipestone, we visit our friends, the Christiansons. We were at Little Falls visiting our friend Chris Graham's the other day. And get this, because it's a broadcast thing, we have been interviewed 4 times on local radio stations, including the Little Falls one, for an hour, that last one. And it was great. We just reminisced about old times and had a great time.
There are 2 things that I'd like to talk about, get your advice on. One of them is I'd like to cover a bit more this notion of treating your contract engineering business as a real business and not something that you take lightly. You guys treated it like a business, almost like a law firm or some other real bona fide consulting business, which you should do. And I think you gained a lot of rewards for doing that. The other thing, and you may want to talk about this first, you wanted to mention what led up to your being nominated for and receiving or being awarded this Hall of Fame award from the Minnesota Broadcasters, because not many engineers get this or are awarded this award. You want to talk about that first?
Well, I don't know, because they don't tell us who were the ones who nominated or the judges or anything like that. But quite frankly, it was due because we did things for the industry. A lot of people are in the industry for years and years and years, and they just don't qualify. We designed equipment, built radio stations, and we interfaced with hundreds of stations. And Paula was always there. She's the one they knew. I was the employee who just happened to show up. Anyway, the point is that it turned out to be just a perfect arrangement. And, I don't know that many couples could actually do that. Again, I mean, we have to be 1/10 of 1% of people who can actually work as a couple together in a business.
I didn't really realize how rare it was until I was ordering a piece of equipment. And I said, you are really good because you recognize my voice when I call. And she says, Paula, there's only two women in the industry that I work with. And this was about 15 years ago. And I thought, yeah, that's probably true. We we treated it like a business. We went to NAB every year. We went to the Minnesota broadcasters. We went to the Wisconsin broadcasters. We were members of the North Dakota, South Dakota broadcasters because we felt it was important to help the industry. And that's what it's all about. You have to treat it like a business. You can't treat it like something on the side because that's not what it was.
Now, there's another thing, too. One of the things that kind of drove us out of business was the taxation. For instance, I might be at a studio and the city tax rates are so many percent. Great. Then I go out to the transmitter, and not only is it not in the same county, but it has different taxation rates, and on and on and on. So a bill gets extremely complicated to figure out and send.
And that's what we ran into because I had to know, now, did this piece of equipment go into the studio or did it go into the transmitter site? Well, why? Because one's taxed at 3%, the other one's taxed at 4%. Then I had to make sure it got to the right place. And it's kind of like, do we really want to do this anymore? And that's why we got, when he hit 70, I says, why are we doing this? And maybe it's time to let a new generation in. Now, he still mentors a lot. We probably get at least 2 calls a day from somebody saying, hey, can you help us out here?
Yeah.
Or, I got this question, what can we do? And he's constantly getting emails. Hey, have you got an idea where we can find this part? And so that's just what we do. We enjoy doing it. We love doing it. It's good people. Radio has been good to us. We always said, take care of the customer and the customer will take care of you. And they did.
Sure.
And they did.
And we remained so busy that we hardly watch any TV.
That seems part of your life plan. You don't get bogged down with the nonsense that's on TV so much.
Well, there is a joke about you retire and you're busier than when you were working. Well, we're just as busy. Let's put it that way.
All right. Hey, to tell you what, we got to take our last quick break. But before we do, can you give me a real short answers when working together all day long and then being together, when you're not working, which for you two doesn't seem to be very much time. What do you argue about when you're, surely there's disagreements from time to time, even more than just, hey, you spent $15,000 on what?
That's why at 5:00 we went upstairs. If it was a good day, we had a drink and I cooked. If it was a bad day, we went out, we had a drink and somebody else served us dinner.
I love it. Well, it sounds like drinking is part of the success plan then.
I shouldn't have said that, but yeah. That's the way we finished off the day, and none of the mail ever went upstairs. It always stayed downstairs.
In the office.
It was you separate the two, and sometimes it's hard. People want to call us at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and it's kind of like, no, we're done at 5:00. We go upstairs.
But the commute time between the two is real easy.
And I never got a snow day.
never had a snow day. Oh, we're talking with the delightful, I'll add that word, but it's true, Mark and Paula Persons. And they together ran M.W. Persons and Associates for many, many years. They're retired now, and it's just been great catching up with what they're doing. We'll have a final word of advice. You two, you're going to be on the hook here in about 2 minutes for some parting advice. I know you have a lot of sage advice, but see if you can pick something that you really, really like. All right. Our show, This Week in Radio Tech, brought to you in part by one of my favorite technologies and my favorite people to implement this technology. It is Broadcast Bionics, and it's the technology of virtualization of broadcast equipment. And they have this product that makes this easy. It demystifies it because it takes all the heavy-duty lifting and hides it from you. It's called Virtual Rack. Now, it still uses Docker containers running in a Linux environment inside a high-quality industrial-strength server. So what's different about Virtual Rack? Well, it's the user interface. And doesn't that make all the difference in the world? My goodness. So Virtual Rack, you plug it in, you browse into it, and you're presented with something that's kind of like an app store. You pick out the broadcast products that you want to run within the virtual rack. You click on them and you tell it to install, and whiz bangs, the wheels go around, the internet gets called, satellites are linking up, and within a couple of minutes, they're installed. Even the complicated back-end things like the Mac VLAN or VLANs that have to be created within the box, those are done for you. And you tell it what IP addresses you want, what you want the thing to do. Now, you still need to license the things that you've selected. They're not free, but your access to them is so easy with the virtual rack from Broadcast Bionics. Telos Alliance has been doing this for a few years now, and I've been delighted about that. Other companies are jumping on the bandwagon as well with virtualized broadcast products like Sound 4 and 2WCOM, and now Ferncast. So there are at least 4 companies now that are making containerized broadcast products, things like audio consoles, virtualized, and you use it on a screen or a touch screen. Sound 4 makes some audio processing. 2WCOM makes audio codecs. So does Telos Alliance, and a phone system. I'm using these at my radio stations. We've got them going in Oxford, Mississippi, and the virtual rack just makes this so much easier. There is a web page that you can go to check this out. Go to bionics.co.uk and look for virtual rack, bionics.co.uk. At the bottom of the screen, the bottom of the page, I should say, there are some videos that help explain how virtualization works and what the virtual rack does for you. There's also a prior episode of This Week in Radio Tech, where we take a whole hour. We talk to Dan McQuillan, who's kind of the brains behind this, or at least the leader of the group. He's got developers working there, and explains and even demonstrates how virtual rack works. You're going to be impressed. I am loving this virtualized broadcast infrastructure, and the folks at Broadcast Bionics have done their usual thing and making it easy. And just you click on a few things and it does the hard work for you. So check it out from Broadcast Bionics at bionics.co.uk. As an engineer, you're going to be doing yourself a favor by checking it out. Thanks a lot, Broadcast Bionics, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Highly recommended. All right, we got just a couple minutes left, and Mark and Paula Persons have been our guests on this Thanksgiving Day. Mark and Paula, I'm waiting for words of wisdom, and it's hard to sort that out from you guys. You tend to pass a lot of wisdom along. What can you give us today?
Wisdom from us?
Yeah.
You're right. I'd say keep a sense of humor, respect your clients, and really do what you love. Find out what you want to do in life and do it.
By the way, I would offer my clients several, maybe 3 different ways to go. The most expensive to the least. Here are the options. You give me the answer. I'm not going to tell you. You figure it out and let me know, and I'll proceed accordingly. And so many clients came back and said, "I'm sure glad you did that," rather than forcing me into something. So we really enjoyed what we did up until retirement. It was, things have to end somehow. And by the way, we are really honored to work with some of America's great radio stations along the way.
Cool. Do you have a couple call letters in mind, or you just want to leave it at that?
To be left unannounced, right? No.
Don't get us into trouble.
There's 100. No, I'd rather than name one. See, if I named one, then
yeah, I know.
So there were so many, and a lot of really great people. Only a few little scofflaws, but which was another story. But
we got rid of them in a hurry. I always said, if I ever had to turn you over to Mark, he's not coming back.
And it happened.
Hey, there's a piece of advice I'd like to give, and it's actually on the bookshelf behind you on your filing cabinet, and that is a book that, Mark, your father wrote, and you were kind enough to approach me and say, Kirk, I like your voice. Would you narrate this book, and we'll just put it out there and make it available for people? And I got to tell you, I read that book I'm not a fast reader. I'm not a great reader. I don't read a lot. But I went through that book. I was on vacation, and I think in 2 sittings, I was through it, told you how much I liked it, and then we thought, well, how about we just narrate this book? Now, you think I talk too Southern, in my narration of this book, because y'all are Minnesotans. Tell us about the book and where people can listen.
That was a funny point for our friends who live in Minnesota, you understand. But thank you for narrating it. And for those who want to hear it, absolutely free, no sign up or anything, mwpersons.com, mwpersons.com. Look for the menu choice. It says something like old radio. Go in there and you can hear it chapter by chapter. And I love listening to it over and over again while I'm on the road. Put it in on a CD. I put it in as a thumb drive, and I practically drive off the road sometimes listening to you with your accent, which is slightly different than Minnesota. So,
his father was in radio.
I have an accent. I'll mention. I will put links in the show notes. I'll go link it directly from your website, and it's also on YouTube. So you can, if your YouTube is your thing, there's a playlist on YouTube where you can listen to all the chapters. And I, as an engineer and as someone who loves radio, this book to me was fascinating, and I love the way that your dad wrote it. I love the stories that he tells. It felt like I was there. It really did. And I learned a lot. I laughed. Don't think I cried, but it was definitely a good read. And thank you for saying it's a good listen.
Yeah, and he liked to poke fun at himself, which is kind of interesting, which is a great way to live, by the way.
He started in radio in the 1930s. He worked in the 20s. He worked at the Pentagon during World War II doing radar, and then he came back and built radio stations. And he was a character. That's where it came from.
Well, Mark and Paula, we have got to go. Thank you so much for spending your Thanksgiving with me and with our audience. I really appreciate it. It's been great to get to know you even better and to hear some of your words of wisdom. I really appreciate you both. Thank you,
and thank you for having us on.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a great day.
Mark and Paula Persons, winners, they are now in the inductees into the Minnesota Broadcasters Hall of Fame, and there are some links in the show notes where you can revisit that and find out more about that. We got to go. Hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving. Big thanks to Suncast for pre-recording our show this week. Thank you very much, Suncast, and for getting it to playback at the normal time. Really appreciate you. We will see you next week. And you know what? Next week, I'll be coming to you from Wailuku, Hawaii. That's on the island of Maui. So we're building some radio stations there, putting 6 on the air, building a couple of studios and racks full of equipment and lots of automation, and it's pretty cool. We will see you next week from Hawaii. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.